Let's do it. I'm ready.
Okay, welcome to 50% Facts. Paul, this is a long time coming. I should have done this a long time ago. And I tell you, like, the moment that I thought about it and didn't do it was in 2018. I went to the Arnold, and I had posted some picture or whatever from the Arnold, and you sent me a DM and you said, "Did Jordy give you the hug that I told him to when he saw you?" And he hadn't, but then I saw him like 5 minutes later, and I said, "Paul said you're supposed to hug me, dude," and so he did.
Perfect. Yeah, I felt the same when I asked you on my podcast. I was like, I should have done this a long time ago. This industry is one that has so many incredible human beings, and to meet someone who you just vibe with right away, and then, hey, like, I always do this. I think my podcast is the most selfish podcast on the internet because I just message people who I think are cool and I talk to them. And it gives me an opportunity because most of us are really busy. So if you say, "Hey, Jim, you want to hop on a phone call and just catch up?" I think you would probably say yes. I would probably say yes. But if I say, "I'm going to put it on the internet," they're like, "Yeah, for sure. Whenever you need, I got you."
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's true. It's true. That's kind of what I've been doing since, excuse me, Mike's away and has been away since June, and used to have the option of just, saying, let's go put together an episode real quick here. And we would not necessarily have a strong idea what we were going to talk about. We have like one thin topic and we can do 45 minutes to an hour, and it was easy, And this way I don't have anybody that I can do that with currently. I have some, people whose schedules don't sync up with mine, who could sit in and talk, sometime later this month or whatever. There'll be more of that, but it means I need to reach out to guests and people that I should, people that I want to talk to and that I should probably have had on the show a long time ago. It's just that we kind of got allergic to doing, remote recording at some point. So
listen, I hope I can add some value for your audience and teach them whatever I have to teach them.
Well, I think
only 50% true, though.
Only 50%. Yeah. There's no fact checking here at all. That's you don't know which 50% is true. And that actually came from something that Mike said in our original podcast.
Okay.
And it ended up being the title of an episode. And then so when we got back together, I said, I can think of a lot of different names, but this is probably the one that gives us the most flexibility.
Just spout off about whatever you want.
Oh, exactly. So, I remember had like a pretty serious injury not that long ago in the past few years.
Yep. So in August of last year, I tore both my quads. I was squatting 750 at a meet and just ended up losing my balance in knee wraps. And so that when I got to the bottom, my hips were a little too far back. And so when I went to push, my knees were right over my feet, and my quad tendons they fractured my patellas. So both my patellas shot up, ended up dumping the bar. Unfortunately, one of the spotters had his finger caught on, like a tip of his finger caught under the bar. So honestly, I was fine until I found out he got hurt. And then I was just so distraught because if I'm hurt, okay, fine. But if I hurt somebody else, that sucks. Luckily, he's a hilarious guy. He actually got a tattoo of a nail on his finger because he lost his finger, and he left a review on the business. So it was at a brewery, which really cool meat venue. He left a review on the brewery that was 4.9 stars, and the review said, "I'll always leave a piece of me there." I was like, "You're too good, man." So funny. But yeah, so 2025 was a big year of recovery for me. Into 2026. And, it taught me a lot about, number one, it taught me a lot about rehab. Like I already had quite a thick background in exercise physiology and strength and conditioning from my experience, but really diving into the rehab sciences and especially the different modalities available to us now was really eye-opening. And I ended up rehabbing to the point where 13 months later, I got injured in July, not August, but 13 months later, this past August, I actually did a bodybuilding show, my second one, and had the best physique I've ever had. So, and my strength is back better than it was before, I would say. I haven't had knee pain since the end of the rehab. And this is coming from somebody I'm running 3 times a week now, rucking once a week, squatting, deadlifting, doing it, jumping, running, and I have no knee pain at all. So the
That's
rehab was
amazing.
pretty cool.
Yeah. I wonder sometimes because some people do sometimes come out of rehabs in better shape. I don't mean just like generally, but like
Yeah.
relative to injury than they were beforehand. And in terms of like, just pain and whatever. And I wonder, and sometimes they're stronger and sometimes, and I just wonder if it is that focus that you don't necessarily always have ahead of time, you know?
Yeah, I think that's part of it for sure. Because I mean, some people get injured and it destroys their world. They just implode and they quit the sport. For me, I ended up quitting the sport, but not because of any other reason than I was done. Right? I'd been competing since 2010. I'd done close to 40 meets at that point. I had already been top 10 all time in 2 weight classes. And knowing that we were going to start a family this year, I'm not willing to do the things that I was willing to do to get to that level of performance before. So
Yeah.
my plan was actually to do that meet that I got injured at as a tune up. I got injured on my third attempt, which I had already squatted that weight for a double in prep. So it wasn't going to be a hard lift. And then compete at Jordan Wong's meet in December and try to break Jeremy Hamilton's Canadian squat record. So I wanted to be the best squatter in Canada. That was my goal. And then I was going to hang it up anyway. But so part of it is focus. What I think actually is the biggest factor in the reason I was able to come back from it in better shape, better function was when you're competing at a high level and you're doing well, even when you're in pain, there's an element of ego that won't allow you to step back. There's an element of ego that won't allow you to actually stop lifting heavy and trying to push your strength and go back to building the foundation. So once I had my range of motion back, because after you reattach, so for my specific surgery, they went in, they cleaned up the bone fragments, and then they screwed my patellar tendons back, or sorry, my quad tendons back to my patella. You have to wait 6 weeks for those screws to have bone heal around them. So I was in a wheelchair for 6 weeks. The first thing you need to do is you need to get those tendons mobile again passively. So you need to allow them to get that range of motion passively, and then you can load it. Once I had my range of motion back, it was all foundational stuff that we all ignore. It was isometrics. It was blood flow restriction training. It was a lot of loaded mobility work. And these are the things that we ignore. Like, why would I perform 60-second isometrics when I can just go squat 500 pounds? One, I don't think is going to get me stronger, but it's going to get me more resilient. And I'm like, how can I, as a educated individual, find a way to blend rehab and training together as I progress through this rehab process? And it allowed me to get really creative. Luckily, I had a phenomenal physical therapist who gave me a lot of freedom in the process. For him, it was more so like, okay, here are the recovery guidelines in terms of time. We can be flexible with those. Let's be flexible with, and instead of doing time, let's do function. So if you can match the function level of this benchmark, I'll clear you for the next benchmark. And I said, okay. And I was still seeing him once or twice a week. And so we did a lot of blood flow restriction. I started doing a ton of isometrics. And I basically just started at 10 degrees of flexion, doing 60-second isometrics in either a leg curl or a leg extension or a leg press. And I would do that every single day for 2 rounds. It took me about 30 minutes. So that was part of the rehab. Then once I was able to load, I started loading these partial ranges of motion, but then also doing full range of motion blood flow restriction training for both hamstrings and quads. Because in my head, I'm like, if I get my hamstrings really strong, It's going to relax my quad tendons through reciprocal inhibition. So it's like, okay, cool. And what I found is as my hamstrings got stronger, my quad tendons were more mobile. Beautiful. I was able to open up some hip range of motion through some specific breathing drills because I couldn't get into like a lunge position to do a traditional hip flexor stretch. So I had to get creative and figure, okay, how do I get some rotation out of my hips? How do I get, some extension out of my hips? Then I was like, okay, well, I can stand and load now. I'm going to do a ton of hip extension movements like RDLs, hip thrusts, really get my posterior chain as strong as possible. Super funny because as I got leaner for my bodybuilding show, my glutes were huge. So it just made my physique look a bit weird. But all of these things put together allowed me to rehab to the point where, I was in a wheelchair for 6 weeks. They told me after the wheelchair, I was supposed to be in a walker for 4 weeks. I was in a walker for about an hour.
Yeah.
Then I was supposed to get full range of motion back by about week 12. I had full range of motion back by about week 8. And then that week 12 mark, I actually did my first bodyweight squat. And then throughout there, just progress. I was training, we'll say normally, like a bodybuilder, within about 16 weeks. I was doing like traditional bodybuilder leg days. The hardest thing to get back was split squatting. I could do Bulgarians because I could offload that back leg, but with my back foot on the ground where the force is going downward through the patella, that took the longest to come back. But it was, let's say 5 months, maybe 6 before I was able to really load that. But by that point, I was doing a ton of isometrics in that position, so that helped it out a lot, sped it up. Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. I think that people who have not worked with a good physical therapist don't understand what a good physical therapist can do.
Yeah.
We actually have 3 physical therapists as members of the gym.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sure I know they're all great. I know they're all really good. But 2 of them have worked primarily in workers' compensation. So they see a particular type of patient. The other one works online and he works with a lot of athletes and stuff. And I worked with him for several months, and I was having so much shoulder pain that I couldn't press without pain. I couldn't do a curl without pain. I couldn't do a row without pain. It was bad. And I've paid out of pocket for physical therapy before and had good people, but he was literally just like the best. He did really good assessments, and we would trial out different exercises to see which ones really hit where they needed to, and were sustainable. Some things you do just in PT can kind of load your nervous system in a way that you can't like keep doing them, or you have to figure out what cadence they should be performed in or whatever. He was really good at that. And like, within an hour or so of any time that we met, I would get a text that had like demonstration videos and just a real RX of the whole thing. And now I don't have any, I don't have any pain when
Oh yeah.
doing any of that stuff. It'll be tired, it'll be sometimes just the tiniest bit sore after, but not anything like what I was dealing with before. And it's that attention to detail and working with the individual client to try to find a thing that works for them.
Yeah, this physical therapist was his name's Ryan, and he did a fantastic job with me. He worked with the Toronto Maple Leafs for a number of years, so he's used to that high performance athlete, but he had never worked with anyone who was enhanced. He had never worked with anyone who was using peptides. And we took the approach of he provided the evidence-based, we'll call it, rehab plan and the exercises and functional benchmarks that I had to meet. And then what I would do is I would take that home, I would rewrite them in terms of what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then we would compare notes. And he said, listen, as long as you're not in pain and as long as your function continues to improve, you have my clearance to push it. I understand you know what you're doing. And we would go in. There was a few, like the soft tissue work, I think you can't get away from. You have to do it, especially in a rehab scenario, because once you cut into a tissue, whether it be a muscle or a tendon, that tissue is different. Like even now, my quad tendons are really thick because when you injure a tendon, it actually loses the ability to absorb and express water. So tendons, what most people don't understand, a tendon is not an inert tissue. It's actually hydraulic. So when that tendon is injured or healing, it absorbs a ton of water and gets really stiff. So those isometrics actually served to teach that tendon to hold tension and allow water in and out in a stable position. And once we got into more movement and things like that, and take into account that 6 weeks I was in a wheelchair, I wasn't just in a wheelchair doing nothing. I was doing muscle stim 4 times a day. I had a home PEMF unit. And for people who aren't familiar with PEMF it's pulse electromagnetic field. So it looks like a little, like a cylinder, and you put the injured joint, or you put it around whatever part of your body is injured, and it increases cellular metabolism, so you produce more ATP and more blood flow, and it helps to clear inflammation. So I was in that thing 4 hours a day. I was doing passive blood flow restriction, which, for anyone listening who's never done blood flow restriction work before, people think it's like, oh, you're just trying to get a big pump. Well, no, what you're doing is you're putting a tourniquet around a joint or near a muscle so that you prevent venous return, which means as you perform the movement, the blood can't exit the limb. And what that does is it essentially creates an amplified exercise stimulus, because one of the reasons why your muscles atrophy after a surgery is they're not moving. So they have very low glucose and insulin sensitivity because your GLUT4 receptors downregulate. So your body's just not able to send glucose to that muscle, so it atrophies. But if you even passively cut off blood flow to an area, those metabolites from its metabolism, those waste products that we build up through contractions, will build up. And so you prevent that downregulation in insulin sensitivity. So you can prevent atrophy. Even after I got out of the wheelchair, I still had quite a good amount of muscle bulk to the quad. It didn't atrophy as much as I thought it would. So I was in a better position when I was able to actually start moving. And then once I was able to start moving, that blood flow restriction, I was doing it while walking.
Oh, okay.
Yep, just walking. So 15 minutes of walking with the blood flow restriction a couple times a day, and then take it off. Anything I could do to create some sort of exercise stimulus, I would do. So even when I was in the bed, I would put the blood flow restriction on, and then I would put the muscle stim on, because the muscle stim would flex my muscles in a stable position. And then the blood flow restriction would prevent that venous return, so I get a better exercise stimulus from it. The muscle stim also served to prevent nervous system downregulation to the area, because when you're injured, your brain says, I cannot send a stimulus to this muscle because if I flex it, it'll explode.
Mm.
That's a good thing. It's a protective mechanism, but it's also going to atrophy your muscle. So preventing that. So I did all of that stuff. At any given point during that 6 weeks, I was doing rehab 8 hours a day.
Goodness.
So I was sleeping in a hospital bed. I was in a hospital bed in my office because the house we were living in, my office was on the main floor and I couldn't go up the stairs. So I had this table that would slide across me and I could work on my laptop and be on the muscle stim, or be on my laptop and be in the PEMF, or be on my laptop and do the BFR. And then every couple hours I would slide the laptop away, do my leg raises, my hip extensions, all the rehabby stuff that I was supposed to do. Slide my laptop across, keep working. So I didn't stop working even, the 8 hours or so before my surgery. When I was laying in the hospital bed, I was like, well, I guess I'll do all my check-ins for today. And that's the beauty of, online coaching, is I didn't lose any money, which was great. Yeah, so I took the rehab as seriously as I would take training for any meet, probably more seriously. And then because the rehab itself was so foundational to functional patterns, like functional capacity of the muscle, other than getting that range of motion back under load, I didn't really have any pain once I did. And my mobility is better than it ever has been because I was
That's cool.
training so many end ranges, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And when I got back to actually like pushing training, you feel like a noob again. It's like it's so motivating. I remember the first couple sessions, like first session doing leg curls, I did like 40 pounds for 12 reps. And then 3 days later, because I was training that, I basically did like an A leg workout and a B leg workout every other day. When I got back to that A workout, it was 40 pounds for 21 reps. So I almost doubled my reps in 3 days. And I was like, well, this is awesome. If I can keep doubling my reps over this time, be this strong at this point in time, I'm like, well, idiot. That's not how it works. Um, definitely got a lot stronger. So returning back to your question, I think the biggest thing preventing people who are in pain, although performing at a high level, is pulling back and actually working on the foundational things that will improve their resilience under load, primarily isometrics and or long duration sets using BFR and doing, 2-minute sets, because those are the things that are actually going to improve tendon resilience. And then also training full ranges of motion. And when I say full ranges of motion, I mean like deep extended ranges of motion because of ego. Another thing I could touch on too is an area that I really wanted to research because so when I went in for my surgery and they did all the imaging, they were like, your tendons are sclerotic. And what that means is that they're very stiff. And I was like, well, sclerotic doesn't sound good. That's a very bad connotation. What does that actually mean? And it means that tendons stiffen over time. What I came to realize that long-term testosterone use or testosterone supplement, testosterone replacement can lead to decreased tendon I guess the word would be malleability, or it increases tendon stiffness because you have increased collagen deposits. And I was like, well, if we look, how many guys 35 plus, who have been using performance enhancing drugs tear something? Almost all of them.
All of them, yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Okay. And I was like, interesting. So if I have thicker tendons that aren't as flexible, and then the training that I'm doing is also very high tension, which also increases tendon stiffness, that's like the perfect recipe if someone isn't training end ranges of motion to tear something. So I think there's something here. And what I came to realize, especially with the isometric work, is that combining isometrics with extended ranges of motion can help to either maintain or reverse that tendon stiffness. And so I started doing it in all of my training. So if I was doing, let's say, a bench press or a dumbbell bench press, I would do I mixed it up. I got really creative with how I did it. So if I was doing my first set of that movement really heavy, well, all of my back down work I would do with really long pauses at the bottom. If I was doing leg presses, I got really strong at leg presses relatively quickly because it was a more comfortable, controlled movement. So it's like, I don't want to load this as heavy. So I would do my first set with that extended pause in the bottom so I didn't have to use as much weight. And then when I was fatigued from that first set, I would keep the weight the same, and then I would remove the pause and say try to exceed the reps from the first set. And then I was like, what if I could do different intensifying strategies with that? So I started doing, okay, we'll do 5 normal reps, and then on the 5th rep, I'll hold the stretch for 5 seconds, and then I'll hold the contraction for 5 seconds, and then I'll do 5 more normal reps. And I got these like really like eclectic rep schemes that I kind of came up with in my head. Even like I'm working with a guy right now with a shoulder injury, so he's doing a chaos bench press with the earthquake bar. So his first set, he's doing a 30-second hold at the bottom on his first rep, and then 10 reps. His second set, he's doing 3-second pauses every rep. So it's that same 30 seconds of isometric, but instead of doing it all at the beginning, he's spreading it out over the set. And then the third set, he has no isometric and he's just trying to get as many reps as he can. So all of these different strategies serve a purpose, because that isometric hold in that bottom position is increasing his proprioception in that bottom position. It's increasing his tendon resilience. It's giving him more exposure to end ranges of motion where we tend to get hurt. And because typically in those stretch positions is where we lose positioning, it's improving his technique. And I started doing it more and more of my clients, and I'm just seeing all of these phenomenal results. No one's getting hurt.
Mm.
Everyone's reporting better mobility, less pain. They don't need to warm up for 30 minutes at a time before they get under a bar. And all the same things that I noticed with myself through the rehab, I'm seeing with my clients. And I'm not going to take full credit for this. I had a lot of amazing people help me out with learning about these things. Dr. Danny Lamartina, who was actually my coach leading into the surgery, taught me a ton. She's a physical therapist and an IFBB pro. She's also all-time, I think, top 5 all-time female competitor at 123 in powerlifting. Dr. Mike T. Nelson really helped me a lot. He's a very famous researcher and author. Dr. Dylan Seeley was phenomenal as well with a lot of the breathing stuff and hip rotation stuff. So I had a lot of help. And that's one thing, I'm not afraid to ask for help, especially when I don't have the answers. But I'm also a really exploratory person. I like to use myself as a guinea pig, as a lot of us do. And yeah, it was just really fun.
You know, it's funny that, that you put it like that, because being my age and having like adopting powerlifting when I was over 40, which is not a thing I usually would suggest. And, in the geared era, heavier weights than I would normally have been exposed to, all that stuff. I mean, obviously I had issues. I had a hamstring tendon issue, supraspinatus tendon,
Mm.
hole punch tears and calcium deposits and all that stuff. That's not even the side that hurts. That side, I was like scheduled for surgery, and I said, you know what, I'm not doing it. The success rate is just not good enough for me to put myself through that.
Supraspinatus is brutal. It's so tedious. That muscle has such bad blood flow.
Yeah.
And one of my clients who had it done, and the rehab was just really, really tedious.
Yeah, that's what I could see coming as. Like, if I'm gonna have to do a bunch of PT for it anyway, I might as well just do it now and see what the outcome is. And part of it was just um, not loading it the way I was loading it before,
Mm-hmm.
and over time and so I mean, I'm probably stronger now, and it's been a few years since I was dealing with that, but and then rehabbing the other side, I'm probably stronger now on the press than I have been in a really long time.
Yeah.
But I was talking about the physical therapist that I work with, but I talked to a lot of people when I was like, okay, I need to actually like I own a gym. I've owned a gym for years. How serious have I been here? And the answer was not very, really. And part of it is that it's running a business is a drain and a hassle, a lot of the time. And sometimes there isn't like the counterbalancing joy. Sometimes there is. And I think I just kind of resented it some. And I was like, well, fuck it, I'm not doing that. But earlier this year, I was like, I really, really have to get serious about it. I want to get my body weight down into closer to where I was before I started powerlifting, and I want to get in better shape and whatever. And I have like 3, 4, 5 people that I talk to about different aspects of it, and get different views. I have my own views about what I want to do, and have sort of cobbled together what I'm doing now, and I'm pretty comfortable with it, honestly. And I don't I don't resent my gym the same way I did before. but I
Perfect.
but I also don't it's not a drain on me to do it at this point. And I think that one of the things that people don't understand when they start committing to, diet changes, lifestyle changes, whatever, um, and being in the gym with frequency and all that stuff, is that it isn't a short period of time that you're talking about. I understand the industry indulges in 12-week challenges in order to generate leads a lot of the time, and customer acquisition. But the reality is that it's a lifetime commitment. You're going to just, if you're going to get into good shape and stay in good shape, there isn't a moment where you can't be intentional about it.
Hmm. It's it's really interesting to me because my personality is such that try to find the good in everything. So when you talk about 12-week challenges, we will never run 12-week challenges with Master Athletic Performance because it doesn't align with our core values. But do I see a world in which that could potentially benefit somebody? Yeah, if it's set up properly. If it's set up so that these 12 weeks teach you the foundational habits required to maintain them. But the problem is typically challenges are set up in a way where it's almost like a shotgun approach to fitness, where you do all the things all the time and it's completely unsustainable. So either people drop off and you have high attrition rates, or people just can't maintain the habits that got them to where they are. And that's why they do challenges around the holidays, because there's this massive motivation for the new year. Or they do challenges in the summer when typically the kids are kind of out of the way, or like it's summer camp or whatever, and people's schedules are a little bit more open.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've personally found, like with regards to the sales process, obviously I've run Master Athletic Performance for 10 years now. I've been coaching for 20. I also mentor other coaches on how to build their businesses. And what I've found to be the most impactful when it comes to building a sustainable business is not selling a product, but selling a relationship. So I think it's really important to engage your clients at every step of the process, from the moment they're exposed to your content to the moment they start coaching, and then that onboarding process and thereafter. How involved can you get this person in the process? Because you're not selling a product, you're actually selling a transformation of identity. Those people who are most successful in losing weight, gaining muscle, they don't do things perfectly. They do things mostly right most of the time for a really long time. To me, that's what consistency means. Consistency doesn't mean that you're perfect all the time. Consistency means that you're somewhat good most of the time for a really long time. And if you can pitch people on, hey, I'm going to meet you where you are, and I'm actually going to show you what you're capable of. Because most people will say, I want to lose 10 pounds. But using myself as an example, so I've recently pivoted my training quite heavily more towards aerobic work, more towards, we'll call it functional training, where I'm moving my body through space, farmer's carry, sled walks, strongman stuff, and then getting back into running. And you would say, well, oh yeah, Paul, that's easy because you want to compete in tactical games. I'm like, yep, I do. Only because for me, having an end goal allows me to create structure. But my true motivation for my training pivot is that we want to start a family, and I couldn't play on the ground with my kids at 250 pounds powerlifting. And one of the main thoughts that I had in my head, I remember laying in the hospital bed, waiting for surgery, looking at my wife. She was completely distraught. And I thought, if I can't play on the ground with our kids because of this, I'm a piece of shit. And so that thought is my main motivator. And so when we're talking to our clients, we're really trying to get down to what's the deep motivation within them to create change.
Mm-hmm.
And it's up to us to create a structure and a runway of progression to get them from where they are to where they want to be, while capitalizing on that true motivation. You know, I got on a call with a prospective client yesterday, 53-year-old woman who's on hormone replacement, and she just feels like completely run down, riddled with stress, and knows that she needs to improve her health. Well, why does she want to improve her health? Lo and behold, she's going to be a grandmother. Right? So it's never the 10 pounds. And I think people will capitalize their marketing on that surface level goal. But the way to build a sustainable business is to set up a structure of relationship that allows you to get deeper with that client, get them to open up, get them to be vulnerable with you, get them to trust you enough so that you can get them on the way to actually the person they want to become, not just the short-term result they want to achieve.
That makes a lot of sense. That's for sure. It is it is easy for people who want to lose weight to get caught up in the scale part of it. And it's not where most people who don't have like a lot of weight to lose, people who are, the people who are very obese, obviously the scale is a big part of it. It's very important for people who have, 10, 20, 30 pounds to lose. If you're actually training, you actually recomp a fair amount, and the scale might not move very much
Yep.
for a while, and you can't really get caught up in that. And I know that intellectually, and yet in the time that I've been, trying to cut down, I and it's not like I haven't been in a calorie deficit since, May, because I
Mhm.
have, but it's not been quick. And then like about a month ago, a little maybe yeah, a little bit more than a month ago, I did a DEXA before I started, and then I did another one at 4 months, and I had lost 19 pounds of fat and recomped 6 pounds of muscle. It's like, okay, well, that's why the scale hasn't moved.
Yep, for sure. And so there's a lot of different ways that we can work with clients on that sort of mentality shift around the scale. I like, especially with my weight loss clients, usually it's females. I'll say, hey, listen, if your weight didn't change from the where it is today, but when you looked in the mirror, you had the best body you've ever had, would that change how you felt? And unequivocally, they say no. I'm like, cool. So we can establish that the weight on the scale isn't the issue. We're trying to work on losing fat and building muscle. And they say, okay, yeah, for sure. And then I'm a big educator. I love teaching people about this sort of stuff. And the common misconception now, because for the longest time it was what the science revealed and what we believed, is that in order to gain muscle, you had to be in a caloric surplus. And in order to lose fat, you had to be in a caloric deficit.
Mm-hmm.
That never sat well with me. Even as a master's student in a physiology lab, it never sat well with me, because if you have body fat, you have energy stores. So if I'm using the energy from those energy stores to train really hard, and training really hard builds muscle, it stands to reason that even if I was eating at maintenance, I could lose fat and build muscle. And that's what the research shows us now. It's much more of a slow process, but it's possible. And I know that conceptually, but even when I'm prepping for a bodybuilding show, I still watch the scale. So there's an education process, there's a mindset process, and then there's the metrics process. So we do have our clients weigh themselves every single day. There's a few reasons for that. Number one, it kind of inoculates them to the fluctuations. Like if I'm weighing myself every
Yeah.
day, that number matters less, because you're not going to gain fat in a day, and you're also not going to lose fat in a day. It takes 3,500 calories to burn a pound of fat. You're not going to get that deficit in a day. Then it's taking pictures. So take your pictures. Let's see your physique. Let's see it change over time. Let's make sure those pictures are taken in the same place, relatively the same time of day, under the same conditions, so you can see the changes. And then the third thing is we get our clients to pick an outfit that they want to wear that's a little bit too tight, and the changes in your physique will reflect in the way those clothes fit. So now we've got three metrics. Oh, I forgot to mention, so with the body weight, when you're weighing yourself every day, there are natural fluctuations based on hydration, digestion status, stress, sleep quality, sleep duration, all these sorts of things. We take a weekly average body weight. So as long as the weekly average body weight is trending where we want it to go, we know we're in a good position. And that trending where we want it to go over time. So typically what I do with my clients based on the app that we use for our coaching is I can say, okay, in the last 7 days, your average body weight has come down or it has maintained. But in the last 30 days, you're actually down 2 pounds. So we're at a half pound a week. We're in a good spot. Then we look at the pictures. Then we reflect on the clothing. So there's a lot of different, and then we can also, some of my clients use measurements. So they'll measure circumferences of like waist, bicep, chest, that sort of stuff. And we can track measurements. So if your waist comes down a couple inches, but your biceps stay the same circumference, hey, you're probably gaining some muscle.
That's a win. Yeah.
You're going to look pretty freaky with some big arms and a tiny waist, right? So there's tons of different metrics that we can track. There's the education process. And what I'm actually learning the most right now, I would say over the last couple of years, probably since I met my wife, actually, to be honest, because this is an area where she truly excels, is most of us have really poor relationships with food. And so food is a really interesting part of our life, because it's a way that we reward ourselves, right? You remember as a kid, you're like, Mom, I got an A on my test. And she's like, let's go get McDonald's, right? So it's a way that we reward ourselves. It's also a way that we soothe ourselves when we're stressed or anxious. It's also a way that we socially connect, right? Breaking bread with your brothers. That also plays with alcohol as well. You know, hey, let's go grab a drink together. It's a way that we bond. So, how do we intermingle this very socially connected part of our lives with something that we actually have to restrict? And so, the next piece is we actually focus on abundance. So, rather than thinking about the things we can pull away, what are the things that we can actually add to the diet that will inherently reduce intake? So that's where we get into, hey, we're going to eat a high protein diet because protein is very satiating. It also has a high thermic effect of food. Hey, I want you to eat 1,000 grams of fruits and vegetables a day. Most people, you say 1,000 grams of fruits and vegetables, they're like, I haven't eaten I actually had a client who had never eaten a cucumber and he was 36 years old. I'm like, what the fuck are we doing here? But you know, when you do it as long as me, there's some outliers. But you know, if you're eating 1,000 grams of fruit and vegetables a day and your body weight in protein a day, that's very few calories, but you're going to be really full. So you're going to eat less of the other stuff. And then not only that, but in the process of actually learning the habits required to eat enough protein, eat enough fruits and vegetables, well, then we can get into establishing baselines of caloric intake. So when the initial progress slows down, now we can start to track total calories. Now we can start to pull those total calories down. Now we can talk about, you know, carbs are going to be great for energy from training. Fats are going to be awesome for your health, and they're going to help with satiety because they slow gastric emptying. And we can get more complex as we go. But it all started with, hey, let's eat enough protein and let's eat a lot of fruits and vegetables. And we focus on abundance rather than, you know, hey, we're going to make you do cardio because you hate cardio, but it's going to burn fat. Well, I don't want you to be in that negative mindset. Let's just try walking a little bit more. Let's get your steps up. So we're adding steps, we're adding protein, we're adding fruits and vegetables, we're adding meals to your day, increasing meal frequency. And all of that stuff inherently decreases your increases your caloric expenditure versus your intake. And now you're losing fat and you're only focused on abundance. So it's a very layered process, but I think the habit formation for me has been the biggest piece, managing people's relationship with food, helping them understand what food does for them and how it impacts their daily life and their performance. I don't know how most people look. Well, I do know how most people look at it, but I look at all of our clients as athletes. So whether they're, you know, I have some all-time world record holders like coaching Jordan Wong right now, and Jordan's going for an all-time world record squat again. Or I'm coaching, again, the single mom who's on hormone replacement and wants to be in great shape for her grandchildren. There's a performance attached to that. So whether you're competing on a platform or you're trying to perform at the highest level in your life, you're an athlete. So when we talk about athletics, we have to talk about quality of nutrition. So the conversation shifts when you bring a performance into it versus just, I want to lose weight.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense because like your daily life is what's important, right? I mean,
yeah,
navigating your daily life. People sometimes just don't get that. I find like if I get into the kind of mode that I've been in for months, I don't really crave stuff. I don't have that. It's just sometimes it's just the volume. Like I want more of a thing that's okay, but I want a lot of it. You know, like currently I'm on a frozen strawberry kick that I just
me too.
cannot break.
Me too.
Awesome.
They're so good, and you can eat so much of them.
Yes. I cleared 2 Costco bags of them this week, which is a lot. But I also like this morning hit the lowest body weight that I've had this whole time, and I do feel pretty good about how I look right now.
Yeah, that's what it's about.
Which brings up another point. I sent a picture to a friend last night, which that's the thing about this industry is that you send nearly naked pictures of yourself to your friends,
totally normal,
and expect to get comments from them about it. Yeah, I sent this to a friend last night, and I had to take a week off of, and I couldn't do anything. I literally wasn't supposed to bend at the waist or pick up more than 3 pounds or whatever because I had a little skin cancer surgery, and they're afraid about anything that's going to raise your blood pressure.
Right. Yeah, you got to heal.
You know, I literally just couldn't do anything. They was wanting you to be couldn't even walk for exercise. They didn't even want that. It's like, all right, whatever. I'll give you a week, but I will not give you more than a week.
Right.
The weird thing is like it's healing really, really fast. It's like,
Yeah, because you're in great shape.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, apparently. Anyway, though, I sent this picture to a friend and he said, I showed this to my neighbor and he said, maybe I should get my ass in shape. And I said, is he old like me? And the response was early 50s, heavy smoker, daily heartburn pills, high blood pressure, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, that is a tough hole to climb out of. If you were faced with somebody like that, like what would your approach be?
That's a great question. Number one, it would be, does this person actually want to change? I think people will say that they want certain things, but ultimately they're really comfortable with where they're at and they don't have enough of a call to action to actually make a change. And one of the things that I've come to realize is it's not my place to judge, right? So if I take it as if someone's willing to reach out to me for coaching, there is at least a spark within them that understands that their current trajectory isn't where they want to go. So there's something within that. So the first step is, what's that spark? So I try to immediately when we get on a call, tell me about yourself. What's going on? What are you dealing with? And it becomes less of a solution finding exercise and more of a truth finding exercise. And that does a few things. Number one, it allows people to let their guard down. Number two, it gives you more information that you can work off of. And then number three, it helps to start forming that relationship. So that would be my first step. Once I have that spark, I try to get a sense of where that person is within their fitness journey. So it sounds like this guy doesn't exercise. He has no idea about nutrition. And then it comes to, what is the biggest lever that I can pull that is a low-hanging fruit? So I learn about his schedule. I learn about his family life. I learn about everything I can about him, almost like a doctor taking a history of their patient, right? It's like, where are the areas in which I can dig my crowbar into and start reefing on it? For most people, it's like very subtle changes. So say he's a pack a day smoker. Well, can we reduce your cigarette intake by one a day? Yeah, probably. It's a very low threshold type of change. But if we go one a day over the course of, I don't know how many cigarettes are in a pack, but over the course of however many weeks, well, all of a sudden, hey, you're not smoking anymore. If it's, I want you to wake up first thing in the morning, drink a liter of water and get out your door. That's your first habit, first thing in the morning, liter of water, get out the door. And we slowly start to build this lattice of habits on top of itself, to the point where over the course of 6 months, a year, this is a person who gets his 10,000 steps, who eats 5 times a day, who gets his protein intake. But it all starts with forming that relationship and getting that first change in there. And I wouldn't start in any case. This is something I see all the time. Here are your macros. This is your workout plan. Check in with me in a week. No, we that's not the way that we coach. We run a very high touch coaching model where I'm talking to my clients almost every single day. We have a DM function in our app that I literally have open all the time, and our clients can communicate with us as much as they want. They can get support, they can ask questions, and we really position ourselves as guides along the journey. And we're not holding their hand and like pulling them along. We're that person standing beside them, walking through the fire, because we all represent ourselves as the person that the client wants to be, right?
Right.
I'm posting my workouts, I'm posting my food, I'm posting my process so that I am the product of my product. And especially now, I've seen this with a lot of the coaches that I mentor, but I've seen it mostly with myself along my journey is, when I was a high level power lifter, I got clients who wanted to be high level power lifters. Now that I'm a business owner who is, I'm going to toot my own horn, but I'm in pretty good shape. 225 pounds, 12% body fat. I get a lot of business owners, CEOs, entrepreneurs that are like, hey, this guy's busy and he's still able to do his stuff. I want to be like him. And so by being the product of your product, it automatically kind of creates trust and credibility. Then if you can show evidence with success of past clients, now you've got this person's buy-in. and then the coaching process kind of takes care of itself. So starting with that person, like if you are that person who wants to create change, do not jump in the deep end. That is, it might work for like a very short period of time. That 12-week challenge might work, but your ability to sustain progress over the long term is 100% based on, it's called self-efficacy. So self-efficacy is your confidence in your competence to achieve a goal or to complete a task. And if you're participating in tasks that are not things that are very hard or high friction activities, your self-efficacy is going to be really low. The only way that we build self-efficacy is through creating evidence of victories. So these small victories that you stack on top of one another add up over time. So, for myself, my first run 12 weeks ago was 5 rounds of 1 minute running, 1 minute walking, and it fucking destroyed me. This morning, I went for a 3-mile trail run and didn't walk a single time. But it didn't start with 3 miles on a trail.
Yeah.
It started with 5 total minutes of walking over 10 total minutes. And that's like the perfect, even when it comes to bench press, like I didn't start off benching 200 kilos. It took me 18 years to bench 200 kilos. It was just adding 2.5s to the bar every couple months, right? So that runway of progression and progressive overload that we have in training, it's the same thing with nutrition. It's the same thing with habit building. So where's that first crowbar jab that I can start pulling on?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, everybody kind of thinks it has to be a 12-week challenge in which you change everything, or, like Biggest Loser style, where you change absolutely everything and you overwork toward a goal instead of an artificial goal, really, instead of something sustainable. Yeah, I think that's.
Can I add one more thing?
Sure.
So one of the quotes that really sticks with me when it comes to habits is from James Clear, who wrote the book Atomic Habits, which for anyone who's interested in habit formation, probably one of the best books you could ever read on the topic. He said, setting a goal and not agreeing to the things required to meet it is an agreement with yourself to be unhappy. And what he means by that is, if you're not willing to become the person who has achieved that goal already, you're just going to perpetually be unhappy. So if I know that my goal is to be functional and able to play on the ground with my kids, but I'm not willing to do the workouts and the nutrition it's like, don't even set that goal in the first place. Right. And that's where the relationship building that I talked about before comes into. It's like, if we do a really good job of getting down to that person's, Simon Sinek says their why. If I can discover that person's why, and it allows me to revisit it throughout the process, I'm using training and nutrition as a vehicle, but the actual direction that we're going is personal development and identity shift. And I think that's what true coaching is.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And another thing about doing everything at once, like if you're trying to eliminate the negative things, the things that are working against you, that's one thing. But if you're trying a lot of other stuff on the beneficial side at the same time as well, you don't know what worked, right?
Yeah, the kitchen sink approach.
Yeah, yeah. It's like that. You have to be a little bit scientific about stuff, and maybe a lot scientific. Speaking of science, I know that you're a big peptides guy, and just like share your personal experience with what's worked for you.
Man, I made that post a couple weeks ago. I actually made the post while we were on the airplane back from Europe, and I was like, yeah, like I've tried a whole bunch of stuff. Again, I like to consider myself a bit of a guinea pig. But I always advocate for doing so in a very educated manner. Like I'm getting my blood work done very regularly. I'm monitoring my biomarkers. My nutrition's dialed in, my lifestyle's dialed in. And I made that post and it went crazy. I think it's at like 65,000 views or something, which for me, I don't have like tons of followers. So that's pretty crazy. But the number of people that were in my DMs or in the comments saying like, what should I take? Or how much should I take? I'm going to caveat the conversation that we're about to have by saying my goal is to just share my experiences with things, not to give advice.
Yeah.
So There's a ton of different peptides in the market. I think starting with like the GH secretagogue peptides, like the ipamorelin, IGFLR3, hexarelin, all these other relins. I personally never dove into them because for me, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Usually you have to take two of them at the same time to get the effect that you want. And for that price, you could just buy growth hormone. So just growth hormone has decades of evidence. We know the effects, we know the side effects, we know the risk factors. It's probably safer to just use growth hormone. That's been my theory on that. Then we get into the GLP drugs. Personally, I have experience with tirzepatide and retatrutide. So the GLP-2, I guess the fourth generation GLP of tirzepatide, which is a GLP-1 and GIP agonist. And then retatrutide, which is the GLP-1, GIP, and glucagon agonist. The rubber meets the road for me as a 35 plus man on TRT who's been training hard for a really long time. I actually really believe that these drugs could potentially be a panacea for guys like us. When you talk about the issues that that population runs into with kidney stress, liver stress, lipid issues, insulin sensitivity issues, even at a very low dose, you're really improving all of those issues. And it's more of I would look at it more of like a prophylactic. Like, yeah, it's going to impact your appetite to some degree. But even so currently I'm running 2 milligram or 0.2 milligrams every day, which is 1.4 milligrams a week for those math majors out there. The clinical dosage for retatrutide is 2.5. So I'm running a milligram under the clinical dose. I'm still hungry for my meals. I do get a little bit less food noise. Like I'm not necessarily thinking about food all the time. Like it's been 3 hours since I ate and I'm like, oh, I probably should eat now. And my meals right now, because of my training, like most of my meals are 700 to 800 calories. So they're big meals. I'm still able to eat them. Digestion is still good. There are risk factors involved. So if you are somebody who struggles with, let's say, constipation, you might want to look at dialing in your digestion before jumping into these drugs because they slow gastric emptying. That's one of the ways that they actually influence appetite. So you don't want to slow your motility down if you're already constipated. That's going to be a problem. So that comes back to the lifestyle piece. Is your nutrition dialed in? Is your hydration good? Are you in good health standing? The other question that I continue to ask myself about these drugs and the effect on insulin especially is we know that being in a caloric deficit will improve insulin sensitivity. We know that losing body fat will also include reductions in or improvements in insulin sensitivity. How much of the benefits of these drugs from the research perspective is actually compounded by the fact that the people using them are losing a ton of weight? And what I've come to realize is that I think the impacts on insulin sensitivity are probably a little bit overblown, especially at low dosages. Mm-hmm. But if you're a leaner individual, you're still going to get some benefits. So that's kind of been my experience. One of the peptides that really impressed me was DSIP, or deep sleep inducing peptide. Towards the end of my prep, I typically struggle with sleep. When I'm in a really deep caloric deficit, I'll sleep like 4 or 5 hours a night. It didn't necessarily impact the duration I was able to sleep, but the quality of sleep I was getting was much improved. Like my deep sleep score, I use a Garmin, and my deep sleep score has improved a ton. And I was waking up feeling more rested in the morning, which was really cool. It's not a peptide that you should use every day, nor is it one that you should use for an extended period of time. But for like typical like end of prep scenarios where your sleep is perturbed, or maybe you're in a really stressful time in your life, couple weeks, I see no issues there. Then you get into the mitochondrial peptides, and I think that's the most popular area right now. People are like, oh, I'm going to take retatrutide, and I'm going to take SLU-PP332 and SS31 and ABCDAFG. These are the ones where, for me, you have to really be in control of the extraneous variables. So we all know the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, right? It's where all the energy is made. Very true. So SLU-PP332, we'll call it SLU for short, is a phenomenal peptide to increase mitochondrial output. So you're essentially ramping up. You're stepping on the gas pedal of the mitochondria. And it has great benefits when it comes to fat loss and energy. When I used it, I noticed that even at lower calorie levels, my training output was still really good. I had better cognition throughout the day. Cool. But we know that whenever we ramp something up, like if we press on our gas pedal of our car, there's more exhaust that goes out the back. And that exhaust is free radicals. So oxidative stress. So if your lifestyle, your sleep, your hydration, some specific supplementation isn't in place, those free radicals will actually do damage to your system. Your liver will be stressed more because that's where detox primarily takes place. Kidneys have to filter these as well, so there's some kidney stress concerns there. And so if you got to take care of both ends. If you're going to step on the gas tank or gas pedal, sorry, you have to be taking care of that exhaust. There has to be something getting rid of that. And I will say, had phenomenal results from SLU. But again, lifestyle, everything was locked in. MOTS-C was something that I tried by itself. Very underwhelming. I didn't really notice much. If I was really going to nitpick, maybe I was a little bit more cognitively dialed in. But MOTS-C is also a mitochondrial peptide. It's actually responsible for increasing mitochondrial efficiency and increasing the number of mitochondria. I actually saw the best benefit when I used SLU PP332 and MOTS-C together, because if I'm stepping on the gas pedal and those mitochondria are more efficient, you can get more from less. So you can take less of each, which in my opinion is a great thing. Then there's something called 5-amino-1-MQ. 5-amino-1-MQ inhibits one of the rate limiting enzymes of mitochondrial output. On its own, probably not. I've never taken it on its own, but on its own, it didn't really make sense to me, because if I'm not pressing on a gas pedal that would make that enzyme rate limiting, why would I need to inhibit that rate limiting enzyme? So for anyone unfamiliar with what an enzyme is it catalyzes a reaction, but you only can catalyze a reaction to a certain degree. Like, you can't push your foot through the floor with the gas pedal. But essentially what 5-amino-1-MQ does, it kind of lowers the floor so you can push that gas pedal further. So I did a short round of 5-amino-1-MQ towards the end of my prep when I had SLU PP332 and MOTS-C in place. So I was stepping on the gas pedal, I was increasing the efficiency of the engine, and I was allowing myself to push that gas pedal further. That means that I can eat a little bit more food, have higher training output, burn more calories through my cardio because I can push it harder. And I was able to get a lot leaner on higher calories, essentially. Then there's a peptide called SS31, and SS31 is more of a repair peptide. It helps to repair the mitochondrial walls. And so it made sense to me as I started with the SLU by itself, implemented the MOTS-C, did a short 4-week run of 5-amino-1-MQ. I'm like, well, I've probably ramped myself up for a really long time. I need to help repair the potential damage that I'd done. So I was like, I'll try SS31 for a 6-week course to kind of come off of the other peptides, repair my mitochondria. And what I found was the benefits that I gained from the more high output peptide cycle were maintained because of the SS31. And during the SS31 use is when I started running. And so I was like, oh, my aerobic output is way better now. And I was able to maintain that, and coming off of the SS31, now I'm super good. Everything is cool. So it's important to understand the mechanisms of action of these peptides. It's important to understand how they can potentially work together in concert. And then it's also important to understand what the byproduct of putting that in your body is going to be. And I can't harp on that enough. It's like, are you monitoring your blood work to make sure that all this ramping up isn't being filtered out? Because that's when problems can happen. I'm trying to think of other peptides I've used. MK677 is one that was really popular probably 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. It's a ghrelin agonist to help your body produce more GH. It was awful. Insulin sensitivity was really poorly managed. It It brought my fasted blood glucose up like crazy. It retained a ton of water, and it did make me really hungry, which was helpful as a powerlifter. But ultimately, it's not something I would ever advocate for anyone to take, or I would ever take again myself. The BPC 157, TB 500, and GHK, those are kind of like the recovery peptides. Those are ones that I am, big advocate of, especially BPC 157. I think it has so many benefits. So BPC 157 helps with something called angiogenesis. So angiogenesis is the formation of additional blood vessels. It's actually a gastric peptide, which means that it's formed in the gut. So people who are taking BPC 157 orally tend to report really big improvements in digestion.
Interesting.
When it's injected locally into a muscle or a tendon, it can help to increase blood flow, decrease inflammation. So BPC 157 on its own, great. TB 500 on its own, TB 500 actually helps more so with collagen synthesis. On its own, kind of meh. I didn't really notice much taking it on its own. And I've used these peptides in the past before with like muscle tears with powerlifting and stuff like that. But I leveraged them a ton during my rehab from surgery. And so I used both of those together for 18 weeks. And then for the first 10 weeks after surgery, I used a peptide called GHK copper or GHKCU. GHKCU is a specific collagen synthesis peptide. So it's actually used a ton in cosmetics. And dude, my scars healed so fast.
Really?
And they are barely visible now. Yeah. So I think if you have a collagen type of injury, so we're talking tendon, ligament, I think it'd be a phenomenal thing to add into the TB500 and BPC. A peptide that I've only recently started using is KPV, which is typically used for GI issues. I don't have enough information on it yet. I have noticed some benefits from taking it in the short period that I have, only about 2 weeks. But I'm also taking BPC and TB500 with it as well. And I'm taking those three together in an injection for some GI issues that I ran into. So I can't really report on that just yet, but I think I'm pretty optimistic about it. I could pull up the post and see if I missed anything. But I think that's a good roundup so far. Let's pull this up here.
It is not always the not always the cheapest
No.
intervention that you can become involved in, but it is something you can make a decision about yourself and not have to rely on a medical professional to prescribe for you.
I think the medical professional comes in when you're monitoring your blood work, like having someone interpret your blood work for you, let you know where the blind spots are. But ultimately, I'm a big believer in agency, right? You have the decision. I actually had a conversation in the comments of that post with a doctor. His comment was, I cannot believe people would take these substances that are untested and un-FDA approved and manufacturing illness. I'll never understand why someone would do that. And my response to him, I tend to be very diplomatic in my responses to people, even if I think that they're kind of dumb. But it's like, it comes down to a risk reward calculation, right? So when I was powerlifting and the conversation was around, should I take more testosterone or not? I was like, I could get a bigger total or I could shorten my lifespan. I want a bigger total, right? So it's my agency allows me to use my cost benefit equation, a risk reward equation as I see fit. Now, that's important because especially in the US, we pay for our own healthcare. So if I'm going to pay for my own healthcare and I'm going to take responsibility for that, that's my decision. But you have to be able to effectively and critically evaluate the risk reward. And most people just look at the reward. They're like, oh, I need to lose fat, SLU. I need to cut my appetite, retatrutide. Well, one of the side effects of GLP drugs is gastroparesis. That's pretty serious, right? Do you want to paralyze GI tract? I don't. And they'll look at, oh, the clinical dose is between 2.5 and 12 milligrams. I'm just going to take 10 milligrams. It's lower than the top end. Well, you're probably going to be pretty nauseous. You're probably going to have digestive issues, right? So understanding. The one that I missed was epitalin. Epitalin is one that's really interesting to me. It's typically used in the anti-aging community because it increases telomere length. So one of the reasons why we age is there's these tails of all of our DNA sequences called telomeres. And as we reproduce our cells, those telomeres get shorter and shorter and shorter. And that results in more and more genetic mutations to the cells. So the cells are less resilient, blah, 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 blah. I used it after the SLU, the MOTS-C, the 5-amino, the SS31. Then I did a 2-week run of the Epitalin. It's not something that you generally feel. I did notice an improvement in my sleep, but it was also during a period where my calories were coming up post-show. So there's a lot of noise there. I was actually talking with Chris Duffin, and he suggested using it around daylight savings time. And I said, oh, that makes a lot of sense because, system's a little bit out of kilter. So that's, daylight savings time just passed. But for next daylight savings time, I'm going to try a 2-week run around that time and see if I can make a better assessment of it. Because it's only I think you run it for 10 days. This one's really cool. BAM 15.
Great name.
Have you heard of it?
No.
It's one of the more like underground peptides. It's also very expensive. But are you familiar with DNP? Okay, so DNP is an old bodybuilding drug. It's actually a byproduct of dynamite production, and they discovered DNP because people that were working in these dynamite facilities were losing fat like crazy. And one of the reasons is because they were breathing in this DNP. And DNP is extremely dangerous because what it does is it uncouples your mitochondrial metabolism. So essentially your body is producing a ton of ATP, but it's getting released as heat. So you're burning energy, and DNP will actually overheat your body, and people can die because you just get too hot. BAM 15 is an uncoupler, but it's specific to the muscle cell. So it actually increases your heat production, but it doesn't raise your core body temperature. I used it while I was dieting before a vacation that we took to Puerto Rico. And it literally, took the lowest dose possible, and I only took it twice a week on non-training days with SLU PP332 on my training days. So I would take SLU on training days, and I would take the BAM 15. Because in my mind, again, understanding mechanisms of action, if I'm going to put my foot on the gas pedal, I don't want something that's going to remove the ability of that gas pedal to put energy to the engine, right? Because if I uncouple mitochondrial metabolism, that energy that I'm producing isn't going to force production, exercise output. So one of the side effects of BAM 15 is fatigue because you're producing all this energy, but it's going nowhere. So I would take the BAM 15 on rest days, and I took the SLU on training days, and I lost a ton of fat and worked 0% harder. So it was pretty impressive. But again, I don't know enough about the side effects to be able to recommend it to anyone. I also don't know what happens when you ramp up dosages because I took the lowest effective dose. So that was just my experience. Pretty cool peptide. So
Yes, so.
That's what I've taken. Taken a lot of stuff. But like you said, these are expensive, and again, risk reward conversation. There is very little human testing. Most of the testing is done with rats or with mice, and you kind of have to extrapolate out. There are guys. So most of the people that take SLU PP332 are taking anywhere between 250 micrograms and 1,000 micrograms. If you took the research based on mice, it's actually 11 milligrams per kilo is the dosage. So there's actually a couple guys I know who are trying taking 100 milligrams up to 150 milligrams based on their body weight of SLU PP332. Sounds cool in theory, and most of them will say, oh, I have no side effects, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I'm going to need to see a little bit more evidence before I make that assumption. Going from 1 gram to 150, from 1,000 micrograms to 150 milligrams. But I mean, if you're losing a ton of body fat and your health markers are in a good place, who's to say? But these are the conversations you have to have. You have to be open to taking some risks.
And it really kind of comes down to for how long as well. For how long? I mean,
Yeah.
how long do your biomarkers stay in a good zone? I mean, an example would being like a keto diet. People's numbers get much better for a period of time until they start getting worse, and it really sort of negates the long term benefit of being on a keto diet unless you need to do it for medical reasons.
That's a great example. So, like I said, it's important to understand the mechanisms of action, the risks, and evaluating them. If you look at something like a ketogenic diet, usually it's coupled with some sort of intermittent fasting or fasting protocol. To me, I look at all these things like tools in a toolbox. So I talked about when I use BAM 15, I only use it on rest days.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Think about all the nutritional protocols that we have at our disposal and how the trend of research has been going. The trend of research has been going that the more research we do, the more we realize that a balanced approach works best. So if you could have a situation in which you are more metabolically flexible, so maybe on your rest days, you use a ketogenic diet, higher fat, moderate protein. Then on training days, you're using a very high carbohydrate diet because you want to fuel your training, and then a lower fat approach. Well, now I'm fueling training. I'm maintaining my insulin sensitivity because if you use a high carbohydrate diet for a really long time, potentially you can decrease insulin sensitivity. So I'm maintaining my insulin sensitivity through the lower carb days or the zero carb days. What if I also included a fasting day once or twice a month? Well, now I'm in a situation where I can burn ketones, I can burn fats, I can burn carbohydrates. I'm maintaining my insulin sensitivity. As long as calories are equated, I know that my body weight will maintain and potentially I'll still have the ability to build muscle. So again, do I have evidence that this works? No. Is there research done that shows someone who's using a metabolically flexible dieting approach? No. Have I used it with some of my clients? Yes. Have I had great results with myself? Yes. Have I have great results with those clients? Yes. But what it comes down to is adherence. How many people are as controlled with their nutrition and their lifestyle to be able to follow such a complex nutritional intervention? Very few. So how many people, if a research paper came out and said, the best way for you to have amazing health, great performance, look lean, be strong, and this is it, does that really help the majority of people? It doesn't, because it's not a sustainable way to live your life. A great example. I've been fasting for 24 hours once a week. So usually one day I'll eat my dinner and then the next day I won't eat until dinner time the next day. I'm doing that as part of a GI protocol that I'm working with a coach on. So that worked well until it was my birthday and then a training day the next day on the day that I was supposed to fast.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to fast on a training day because I'm training 3 times a day right now. So I couldn't fast that day. And then I found myself, even knowing the fact that like if you miss a week, it's not a big deal. But I found myself thinking like, oh man, you're not doing what you're supposed to do. It brings, again, the relationship with the process and my personality is I check the boxes. So all of these things come into play. It's like what's best for the outcome has to be best for the individual and has to be flexible enough that they can follow it mostly right most of the time for a really long time. We're back at the beginning of our conversation, right? So I love having these conversations because I think most people just look for the best. And the best is now deemed optimal. So people will talk about the optimal way to train. You know, the biomechanics bros are like, this is the most optimal movement pattern. What they really mean is this is the perfect movement pattern. And perfect is not optimal. Optimal is what works best for the individual within their current context. And if we reframe the word optimal to what works best for you based on where you're at right now, that's a much easier pill to swallow for people. And it makes it more, you're able to adhere to it a little bit better. And then you're able to sustain it for a little bit longer. And then all of a sudden you get better results doing something that is suboptimal. Aren't we just after the results here?
Yeah, of course. Well, I got one potentially explosive question to finish this off with.
Okay. Um,
Uh, here's the question: are all powerlifters frustrated bodybuilders?
all no, some yes. So the interesting, like, I could go pretty deep on this topic. I think most powerlifters started off as bodybuilders, but just didn't want to diet and ended up realizing that being really strong is cool. I was one of them. Like, I just was like, I just really don't want to diet. I like being cool. I like squatting heavy. I like doing singles. So I'm just going to powerlift instead. But at the end of the day, all of us want to be big, imposing dudes. Like, I think very few people get into this and say, like, I just want to build a little bit of muscle. No, we want to be jacked. We want to, be imposing when we walk in a room. And the funny part is powerlifters, I'm going to generalize here, but I think powerlifters walk into a room and are like, I can bench press more than everyone in this room. And all anyone sees is, that guy's breathing really heavy.
Yeah, true.
But ultimately, I think there's a lot of people who think powerlifting, and I was one of them, is it's a lot easier to get external validation from powerlifting than it is from bodybuilding. And I think a lot of us start within this pursuit for external validation. I see it a lot with my clients. I've also experienced it in my own journey. I started powerlifting because I didn't think I was good enough. And I thought that if I got stronger and if I put up big lifts, people would recognize me and I would have some worth in this world. And I know that's probably a bit more philosophical than you thought I would go, but it's easier to do that when you're lifting heavy weights because it's objectively visible. If you're a bodybuilder, it takes a really long time to build an imposing physique. It takes a really long time to build up to the point where, you're 220, 250 pounds of muscle. Even if you're carrying a little bit more body fat, if you can fill out a shirt, a 2XL shirt, you're an imposing person. But it takes a really long time to achieve a physique like that. So I think powerlifters are just in it for a lot of powerlifters get into it for the external validation, and it's just easier to get from lifting heavy because you can get strong relatively fast because it's a neurological adaptation than you can from a more physiological adaptation like building muscle and having a big physique.
That's a reasonable answer. Yeah.
Okay, fair. Not explosive. I'm sorry.
Not well, I just said potentially. I didn't say it had to be. So
Fair enough.
Well, anyway, Paul, thank you very much for coming on. Where can people find you?
Sure. Yeah. Dude, it was my pleasure. You can find me on Instagram at Paul Oneid. You can find my coaching company at Master Athletic Performance. And I also have an education and mentorship company, Coaches Corner University. You can find that at coachescorneru.com. We have an education website that is $30 a month, and it has close to 200 hours of lectures by myself and 28 other collaborators. And then I also run a mentorship program for other coaches looking to build their businesses and scale. So that's where you can find me.
I am at the Jim McD on all the social media. This show is 50% Facts, where percent is a word and 50 is just numbers. 50% Facts is a Speaker Prime podcast in association with iHeartMedia on the Obscure Celebrity Network. And thank you again. I will see you next week, probably.